Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Improv Network podcast. This is a series of conversations aimed at building stronger connections throughout the improv community. I'm James Castada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
And we are the education team for the Improv Network, which you are seeing this stream on the Improv Network Facebook page or the Improv FAQ YouTube channel. Improv FAQ is sort of the education department of the Improv Network. So just to be clear on where you can find streaming for this content, the Improv Network Facebook page, Improv FAQ YouTube channel. You can also go to theimprovnetwork.org and check out all the resources available to you through the Improv Network, including the ability to make yourself an improviser profile. You can make profiles for your teams, submit to festivals real easily. Virtual festivals are on there, and all sorts of blogs and written resources, and also a dedicated Improv FAQ. The Improv Network. I hear. Are you doing a watch party, Bob?
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm part of the tech team for the.
Yeah, we're not the
Improv. We're not the tech team. I'm not the tech team. You be the tech. I am not.
I mean, it's a struggle, man. All this.
Well,
we have watch parties back. Last week we were talking about how watch parties were not available to us because of like political censorship or whatever.
Yeah. Or me. It was just me not pushing the right button.
Who knows?
I would like to blame politics for everything in my life.
We're not the tech team.
We're not the tech team. Follow our other podcasts. We're not the tech team.
Yeah. Speaking of snafus, so Eagle Eye viewers may have caught the title of this episode as it was posted for live streaming. Having our guest Shannon Stott, who we will certainly have soon at some point. But I just, I was looking back at our communication, and I try to do my best, especially with all of this remote collaboration stuff, to make sure I'm marking time zones on the times that I give people. And I only did it like half the time in the communication with Shannon. So I'm like 99.9% positive that Shannon being on Austin time, which I think is like 2 hours behind, it was under the impression that this was at 1 p.m. in 2 hours for her. So that's completely my fault. Bob and I decided we'll just jump into the episode with the two of us on the same topic. If for any reason Shannon is able to join during this stream, or we'll of course have her jump in.
Or any stream. Anytime Shannon Stout wants to jump in, I'm a fan.
Midstream. That's the motto. Otherwise, we'll make sure that we get her to have a conversation in the near future, because we've had her on before. She's a really great person to talk to, and there's all sorts of things that we would love to have her join for. Our topic for this episode, though, is going to be talking about a question that somebody may possibly like just tongue in cheek, not like a serious question posed during our initial live stream with the Improv Network. Somebody said, who is the show really for? Is it for us as players, or is it for the audience? Like, really, who's the show for?
Right.
And we thought that was a great question.
I love this question.
So whether or not it was intended to be a super serious question, we're going to
right.
I think it's a great question.
Because I've heard that question asked as kind of like, in the middle of what I would call a wonky show. And who are we playing for right now? But like I really do like the overall, like, who are you playing for when you go up there? Like, I really haven't gave it any real thought of it, because there's always been such a shtick line. But I think it's a serious question that you should probably ask yourself. James, let me ask you, what is your first initial thought? If someone was like dead on asking you, James Casado, who are you playing for, yourself or the audience? without what's your gut instinct? What's your answer?
I think it's a complicated answer. I think I mean, like the cop out answer is both. I think that is true.
Right.
But I think that like what came to mind for me that is a interesting thing to explore in the conversation is that like we do a lot of work when you start improvising as a student to train each other to like ignore the audience, don't think about getting laughs,
Right.
you know, just focus on your scene partner, just play for you, you know, just take care of the scene. And I think that that's a good thing to condition people to initially, because it kind of diffuses some bad habits and panic modes and self-consciousness about being on stage.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing that by the time that people graduate an improv program, you know, I don't know that we tend enough to the reintroduction of the audience by the
Right.
end, because of the fear that like, oh, we don't want to make it about the audience. We don't want to sell each other out. We don't want to be selfish. We don't want to be shticky or hacky or whatever. But I do think that it should eventually come back to an inclusive experience, not necessarily like turning and directing your like playing off the audience.
Yeah.
We can talk about meta if we want, but like being conscious of the real people in the real room.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point. Like in the beginning, especially when we start doing short form, and I noticed like in the short form shows that we do, we are more conscious of the audience, and I think by default we less interactive, or we paid less attention to the audience when we do long form, because that's the way we were taught. And when you see troops, I know we go to these two guys a lot, but when we see someone play like two man no show, they're interactive with the audience. So I'm not saying that those guys play for the audience or who they're playing for, but just as far as interaction, there's a big difference, you know. And I think you hit it on the nail on the head when you were talking about like we're supposed to embrace the audience, but then we're supposed to ignore the audience when we do this thing. And there's all these little, I don't know, boxes we put different types of improv in, and I don't think that's necessarily necessary. Put that on a mug.
It's a tough balance. Yeah. It's a tough balance to just sometimes the like the idealism of the art form versus like just the practical like mechanics of things, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to get too hung up or too like purist about the art form of it, or too sort of analytical or strategic and stuffy about the mechanics or the practicality of considering the audience and whatnot.
Yeah.
But your initial thought, I know you were especially excited about this question. What sort of answer do you have in mind? You know, knee-jerk reaction to answer the question. What do you say?
Well, I would usually reply with that BS answer for both, but I think that's kind of true, but within a range. I mean, again, what we're doing is art. So would you ask any other artist like, hey, why'd you sculpt that? Was it for your audience, or did you sculpt that for you? You know, and I think depending on what kind of day you're having or just how you feel when you get on stage, it could be more about you than it is the audience. And you know what? There's been days where I needed to get on that stage to just be away from the world. Mm-hmm. And I had a great show because of it, because I needed to be on there, and it was 100% for me. So that was all my ego. And I think it was still a great show. And sometimes like you get on, like, I think about that time that you, Gary, Kara, and I did that show for those college students in that big room. Yeah. That was for them. Because I've never gotten such a great vibe from a room in my life. That was one of my all-time favorite shows. That was all for them. It washed all my ego off of me because how supportive the house was. So It's like, what do you want me to do? I got you, because you guys are amazing.
Y'all are having fun.
Yeah. And we're all in this together. This is great.
Yeah. So that's interesting. That's a really good example. I mean, like when it's just an interesting thought that like if the audience is really loving the show, you would think that like that would make it lean a little bit more about you and the adulation and the, you know, laughs and applause and stuff. But really it can turn entirely the other way and just be like, I, I'm not going to do what I want to do. I'll do what you want to do, and
Yeah.
just, like, have fun, kind of giving a good time to the audience if they're like really riled up about it. I've definitely had those like
Yeah.
easy audiences, big audiences, that yeah, it's like I'm not doing anything complicated or challenging or like really like pushing myself for flying by the seat of my pants in a lot of the ways that are valuable to me if I'm playing more for myself. But it's still just like, all right, they're loving it. Like, it's
Absolutely.
simple, easy, and great show, I guess. Like that's funny, man. Um, yeah, and the other thing that's interesting there is that like sometimes when you like have to forget about the audience in order to do your best show. So when you're saying,
Mhm.
Bob, that you sometimes need to play the show for yourself because your mood,
Yep.
whatever it is, that like sometimes that can be the thing that
Yeah.
leads to it actually entertaining the audience more is if you're completely unconscious of those things.
Yeah. If it's a sliding scale, sometimes I have to play protected because, again, it might not have anything to do with the stage or the audience itself. It's just how I feel as a human being going to do a show. And if I'm protecting myself until I can get comfortable to like drop all the world's crap and leave it behind me, and then get to play, cool, because I always think some of the best improv is playing vulnerable, and if I can't get to that point, I have to make it interesting some other way. So maybe I'll take risk in other areas that I'm not, it's not necessarily a Bob style playing, but today it's just how I have to play just to be entertaining. So again, I'm playing for me, but it's also a byproduct that should be interesting to the audience. Because no offense to the audience, I respect them, but they're not the artists, so I don't always have to listen to them. Sometimes giving them what they think they want is a good idea, and sometimes they don't know what they want. So or what they think they want is too basic for me or boring because I've done that 100 times. So I'm going to do a decision I think is more interesting and may lead to a more interesting scene, and they'll appreciate it. They're not the directors; they're the audience. They don't always get what they want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, you know what? I call that style of playing the Red Wedding.
That's what you call it. You call
That's
you're
how I explained it to myself. In that, yeah, you know what? When I was reading Game of Thrones, I did not want the Red Wedding. I wanted a wedding. I thought, oh, this is gonna be great. Everything's gonna be cool. And then the Red Wedding happened, and I was like, oh, I didn't want it, but now I'm glad it happened.
yeah.
So it's a Red Wedding.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's tough. I guess it's also about like what you need as a player. Like if you're
Yeah.
tending, is it getting in, what's getting in your way is the question, right? Like if thinking about the audience too much is getting in your way, if you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling like that's kind of an uncomfortable thing to stop thinking about, then you probably should push yourself to think about it less and make sure that you can be successful being less conscious of the audience and playing with a different focus. And the same thing probably goes if you are completely, I know people who are like really frustrated as improvisers, or like their version of getting into a rut is that like they're great actors and they're tending to like the good supportive improv, but they're just left feeling kind of like they're not the one who's getting laughs
Yeah.
or propelling the story or getting a lot of moments to like run amok or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But they're still doing a really good job. And I think that possibly what's going on in for someone like that is that they are tending very focused to the integrity of the scene, which is great. But then it's like, well, maybe try to throw out some feelers, or play a little differently and see if you can kind of like tickle the audience a little bit,
Right.
and maybe that won't ruin the scene. Maybe that will actually make the scene better.
Absolutely. Because I mean, I think about when Go first opened, and Detroit's always had a pretty decent, a strong. I'm going to say strong improv scene, but there's still so many like suburbs and stuff around Detroit, and places in Detroit where they're not familiar what improv is. And I'm sure I hear that all the time when we go to different cities that's not Chicago or LA or New York. You when you tell someone you're an improviser, the person, oh, you're a comedian, tell us a joke. And you got to realize there's so many people in that audience whose only familiarity with improv might be whose line, and maybe not even that. So you can't necessarily count on them to structure how you're going to play. But I mean, there's also reading the audience. You know, you can tell what kind of style or what things they're interested in. You know, like if you have a bachelorette party, you're probably gonna have to play a little bit dirtier than you would like to. But hey, they bought the ticket, so you know you kind of got to play to them, but not for them, I guess.
Yeah, that's I think that's an interesting distinction, is to them, not for them. With them, it's like when I think about the role that the audience plays, it's just inclusive, balanced between the players, myself as a player, and the other players on stage, and then also the audience, because I like to exploit moments. I lean a little bit more meta, and either way, like even if that's not where it's coming from, it's like putting yourself in some degree in the shoes of the audience. Makes you notice things more. Like you're thinking like if I noticed this thing, they probably did too.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, if I exploit it, I'll bet that they'll be on board with it because they noticed it, you know. And sometimes go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I was thinking about and I hate talking about scenes, like specific ones, but this does remind me of one of my favorite scenes of all time. Pete and I were playing our 2-man set, and I want to say you were in the audience because I remember us talking about this after. And there was a group of ladies who were there on a Sunday having drinks. I don't know why they went to an improv show to drink and talk, but that was their plan. They came into the show. It was a kind of a lighthouse, and they were talking loud. And we're doing our best from the stage to do the hush thing during the previous sets, but they weren't taking the notes. So I think me and Pete were either the second for last or closers, and we just started using everything they were saying because they're being so loud as part of the scene, and then kind of making fun of them. You're not playing with them, not being mean. And just interpreting what they're using as gets just throughout the scene. And the audience was loving it because, like you were saying, like they noticed the people talking in the audience. They noticed, and then actually it got to the point where the women who were talking were noticing that we were using the stuff, but weren't aware that we got the stuff from them. Like, for example, I think one of the ladies was like, "Oh my God, that's so Karen." And I could have sworn Pete said that so many times because I was Karen, like, and that's me. Oh, that's so Karen. And one of the ladies, oh my God, we were just talking about Karen. And the audience died. Like, it's just one of those things, like, we weren't playing for them. We were kind of playing to them in a way. And I would honestly say 90% of that was for us because we were so frustrated with this entity in the audience. But no, everybody had a good time. So it was a win-win-win.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great example. And we've talked in the past before about like how that can be a little risky too, but like risks are a good thing to take, and as long as in the spirit of playfulness and connection and fun, right? Like,
absolutely.
You're poking at them a little bit because they're being disruptive, but like nobody's being malicious. Like they're probably not either. They're just distracted, having a good time, and not being as conscious or considerate of the rest of the room, and like being a little forgiving and patient about that, and then finding a way to like play with it is a really powerful, fun thing for you guys on stage, for the people who are trying to pay attention to the show. Now everyone's like in on the thing that's happening, and then eventually to win over the group to be like, wait a minute, there's
a Karen on stage. Yeah. And honestly, I think that's when the set became a lot of fun, because at first we were kind of getting away with something he, But as soon as the audience didn't have to, the non-talking audience didn't have to divide their attention because everything was, now the stages actually got larger. The people who were talking got exactly what they wanted because they wanted, they wanted to make it about, they wanted a little bit of focus, maybe not as much as they realized they did. It might be subconscious. And me and Pete wanted to do a show. So again, it was this moment. It was just enough of us playing for us playing to them, us playing for the other people that we got that total balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. That's a scenario with like general audience. And as we get deeper into this conversation, we just have to acknowledge also that like ain't nobody having a lot of these scenarios anytime recently, probably not soon. Just another like thing that we have to flag in the pandemic digital world. But I think about like who's in the audience, right? And so in part of this question for me is like I know especially in a community like the New York improv scene that you get a lot of improvisers in the audience, a lot of improv students, a lot of I mean it's just a higher volume city in general, and there's more students, there's more improvisers, and also just a lot of like in the know people. Like you're talking about not every audience knows what they have in store for an improv show, which is also exists in New York plenty, but you get a little bit more of like those audiences where like, is everyone here playing in the show? Or like without knowing each other, right? Like you get a sense of like, I don't know any of these people, but we're halfway through the show and I'm pretty sure I've seen systematically everyone get out of their seats and be the next team on stage. And in I would guess just about any city, maybe you have like a jam or a student night, and in a scenario where you have other improvisers or students of improv in the audience, how does that change the answer to this question, if it does at all? Does it change it for you?
I
guess real quick, just to clarify, my question is like, do you kind of play by a different set of rules? Do you play more recklessly when you know that everyone's an improviser? Do you play more artfully, or do you know what I mean? Like does it affect things?
No, that's a really good question. And I guess that's a sliding scale as well, because if I'm playing, depending who's in the audience, it might push me to do something I think they would find interesting. But with the caveat that I want to see what it looks like as well. And maybe because I feel safe. Again, part of the entertainment of improv is the presentation of the process, the creation on stage. So if it's almost as if you're a magician, like if you're playing in front of Penn and Teller, you're not going to do some sleight of hand that they're not, because they know all the sleight of hand tricks, they know all the close magic things. You're going to have to go big. You're going to have to do something they've never seen before. And that might push you to try something. I don't know if this is going to work, but if I pull off this prestige, they're going to really, they're going to love me. So
yes. Yeah. I use that analogy too, the magician thing, because it's a perfect analogy. It's magicians playing for other magicians. Everyone's looking at it like they see what you're doing. They might still be enjoying it, but you're not tricking them. They're also magicians. Like
absolutely.
So and for me, like I feel like a lot of my playing style, because I do like to play into absurdity and tap into like surprising things. I feel like that gets a little more diffused or disarmed if I don't have passive bystanders in the room. If everyone is a player or thinking about, the mechanics, or just like less surprised by things. So then I don't know where I go to. I think I just try to like I don't know. It's been something that like it's like, man, it's just, I know that this would be a different experience if there were more of a general audience.
Right. And I don't think there's a passive way of doing this too, where if you see, I don't know, for example, if my girlfriend was in the audience and we just had Thanksgiving with her family, like her aunt says something weird, and it's a funny bit to us that we do in the car, but I might bring it on stage because I also feel like that bit can be relatable. So I'm not trying to do the bit that she and I do in the car on the nose. It's just like, oh, this is a character that's kind of stuck in my crawl. Like it's in my wheelhouse right now. I
Mhm.
might it just might pop up because something someone else said inspired that, and like let's just play with that. And that's almost playing a little bit to her, but also it's like I wonder like as if it was a toy and I was a kid, like, oh, when I'm at home, this is, but I play a certain way with my GI Joes. But if I bring my GI Joes over to James' house and he's got nothing but He-Man, how do these guys mix up? Like, it's crazy because of the size difference. One 7-inch, one is 3-inch, and it's just it's crazy.
It's interesting too, referencing things for someone in particular. If you're trying to either impress or just because you have an ally or a partner in the audience, that is also interesting. Steven is chiming in with a couple questions / comments here, right there with us on the question of whether we play differently for other players. And my short answer is yes. And I guess I don't know how I'm trying to find something different to tap into, because I am only one part trying to do a well-crafted scene, in the sense of that's not that I like that X factor element in things. So trying to find what that is, how I can kind of help twist and turn and take surprising paths is definitely a challenge. I think that it's just, sometimes it's absurd. I've been in rooms where everybody seems like an improviser. It's my best guess or understanding at what's happening, and there's people on stage making good moves, like yes and moves, and using specifics, and this who what where thing going on, and there's cheering and sports audience behavior from teachers and coaches and other improvisers who are yeah, good on you for giving us the where or for heightening, or to make that callback. And
you caught that small detail. Nice. Yeah.
And
good pivot.
I think it's so cool in one sense. The other part of me feels a little pinned down and condescended to, patronized on it, if I'm the person on stage being cheered for because I made a callback or just did something that's a good support yes and early in a scene. That's not something that an audience would cheer for, a general audience, in my experience, most of the time.
Yeah.
And so when other improvisers are woo, sick move, it's fun, it's cool, but I'm also what is this?
I know, I love it. Oh, because we're watching, when we first started improvising, you're watching improv with different glasses, right? You're watching with audience glasses, so you're just hoping for a good scene, because getting a good scene out of you is the impossible task, and it happens rare. And your teacher is coaching you, so you kind of give them partial credit. When you start doing good scenes on your own, and it becomes more of a just your everyday performance thing, then that's not especially anymore. So you start looking for the little things, you start breaking it down. Again, going back to the magicians, you start looking for the sleight of hand, how they hide it, what's their how they using their other hand to distract, what are they doing, what's your interpretation of a trick that I've done 1,000 times. That's incredible to me. So I do appreciate it, because I don't think it's ever been insincere. So I dig that.
Yeah, I don't think it's insincere. I just think it makes it a completely different experience for me as a player, where I'm I don't know if this is what I want to do. The times where I'm totally on board for that would be jams, auditions, and like rehearsals. So like, and maybe not even really jams. As much as auditions and rehearsals, because it is like a closed, like
Right.
club thing where I love having. I auditioned for house teams at People's Improv Theater, and they have like 100 seat like auditorium seating thing. It's packed with 100 improvisers doing callbacks, and everybody is just cheering. And also like these auditions are at like 11 a.m. So so they
Wow.
go all day. They go like 6 hours. And that is an incredible experience to
Yeah.
kind of like showcase. Here's me exercising my skills as an improviser, showcasing them that I can
Right.
do a good job with the fundamentals, and for people to support and get into cheering for each other is really great, and it's an amazing experience. I would
Yeah.
there's no other way I would want to have it. When I'm thrown off at a general like 8 p.m. Friday night show like that, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not auditioning for anything. I'm trying to entertain people who can get caught up in the whimsy and the surprise of improv. You know what I mean?
I get it. Yeah. I guess structured that way, I get your point, but I still love it. I don't know. I wish honestly. I guess because we don't see too much of that around here, or especially this last year. So that just sounds like fun.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, because
Yeah.
again, I think
Yeah.
um for if it's a festival, special event, whatever, when it does happen and it's sprinkled in throughout the calendar, I
Right.
agree. I think it's great. The
Uh,
reason it becomes problematic for me is when
yeah.
it's like most times.
Honestly, I wish it was more specific. Like, because I think people get to that point where they get so comfortable in doing good scenes, they start to lax on the basics. So, like fundamentals and stuff like that. And I would like to see like people get really, oh, way to name each other. Like, yeah, oh, we make it today different. Woohoo! Like, I would love
Yeah, yeah.
something about that would make me so. You know what?
I
Maybe
guess
if we only did it once a year, that'd be cool. If we did it every 8 p.m. on a Saturday, I think that would be annoying. But
yeah,
with
yeah.
with that caveat of like, like the Friday before diff, we should do that.
Yes.
Just so everybody gets fine tuned. Just a calibration audience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly, and it's a good for being uplifted and being emboldened.
Yeah.
Uh it is. So real quick here, Stephen chimed in with another comment, and said it's like teaching trained actors versus teaching people off the street. I think this is a very interesting comment. And
Mhm.
I'm guessing it has to do with the way that we're talking about the dilution of magicians playing for magicians and
Right.
whatnot. But Stephen, I'm wondering just if you can elaborate a little on how you're thinking about that, because to me that reminds me of just like the how long improv has gone on, and generations where like the people who tend to stand out early in the improv evolution are probably people with theater and acting experience, and then deeper into it you have people who are improvisers teaching improvisers and not necessarily
Right.
acting experience and whatnot. So but I'm wondering if you're thinking about that in terms of the question, how players are either playing more for themselves or for the audience, and who's in the audience and all that. Just curious if you would aim it at one of those things. Um,
So I want to go back to his first statement. The Do you play different for other players? I love that question because I do think there's a part of me who does that. Like you kind of play. If you know someone plays a certain style, you want them to enjoy playing with you. So you want to set them up. You want to throw them underhand. Like, oh, this is the thing they like to do. Like for example, with music improv, not exactly my forte, but I really appreciate it. And if I was playing with someone like Stacey Smith, like I'm setting Stacey Smith up for a song. She's she loves to sing. If I can set her up to do a solo and she can crush it, absolutely. But with other people, who I'm closer to, like I know there's stuff that I think they do well, or they're trying to do that may not be in their wheelhouse. So I might play, you know, differently in another way, like to challenge them more, in the hopes that they're still having fun. But like, hey man, you've been playing yourself for the last 3 scenes. I'm gonna call you Grandpa just so you play an older character. But that's
Yeah, so
that's just for fun.
that's almost you're talking about like as opposed to playing for yourself, like playing. Now we're talking about like, okay, you and your friends, people that you know that you play with, playing for, almost toying with them more than you're concerned about how much you're getting out of it, or the audience, whatever. But yeah, I think that's a great question too. Is like, do you play with a team that like needs to put its blinders up to really like play with each other and kind of do things that make each other laugh, and that's your way to have the best potential show, yeah. I don't know why this just came to mind, but I've been like doing like late night shows. Like we at Go Comedy, we do a show called Name This Show. It's like the midnight show. And it's a bonus show. It's like separately billed. It's a thing we hope people stick around for. So it really varies. If we have a sold out 10 o'clock show, half the audience might stick around. It could be like 50 people. And that's a great midnight audience for sure. Sometimes it's like 2 or 3 people. And then it's like, then we're like, should we do it? Does everyone want to do it? Like, something that happens like backstage is that people were like, all right, guys, this one's just for us.
Yep.
And me and Joe Hingelberg one time just like had this epiphany that was cracking us up. That's like, wait a minute, why when it's a lighthouse, why do we say that? Like it's just for those people, like those 3 people. That this show is just for them. If
that's a good point, because
audience, the show would be just for us.
How many audience members does it take to get back for it to be to them?
Yeah.
3 too little, but if we have 6, then it's for them.
Yeah. And I've done shows that were like really, really fun that were to like literally 2 people, and we did just like really engage and interact with them. And I don't want that to be every time, but that is just another example of like if the audience is super small, that's when I do play a little bit more for them instead of for me. Because if they're not into it, then we've all wasted our time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, you shouldn't punish an audience for being the actual ones who showed up to support you, but that kind of makes me think, like, there are moments where I've gone on stage and I was ready to give everything to the audience, and for some reason it was just a cold house. So I had to flip the switch, like, all right, well, this one is kind of for us. And you know what? Sometimes what you may think is a cold audience is just an audience who's too polite to applaud, because they're not familiar with applauding during a show. These are people who haven't been in a theater before or often, or maybe more used to being at the movie theaters where you are entertained in the same kind of seating, and you're not supposed to make noise or you get shushed. So yeah, you have to, you shouldn't take it out on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's the.
Because I guess I was trying to say, like, just because you're playing for you doesn't mean it shouldn't still be entertaining for anybody who actually paid money for a ticket.
Yeah, you're gonna be sorry you stuck around for this,
man. I know it says All-Star Showdown, but you're welcome to the Bob Show.
Yeah,
everything entertaining on here is only for Bob, and you're gonna be miserable.
Yeah. So Stephen followed up to say that in terms of playing for other players, he says, I think you can take lots of shortcuts, get deeper into scenes, or play with form versus emotional content. And I think that, yeah, that's a great point, especially if you know what types of players, like if you're all from the same generation of like you're all taking classes at the same time, and um, or whatever. Like if you know what everyone's shared knowledge base is
Yeah.
in an audience full of other players, then yeah, I think that's right. Is that like you might actually be able to go farther into a scene or just like assume more license to make bigger moves, or be more patient, maybe be more extreme in any regard, than with a general audience that you have to make sure is like, okay, is there clarity on every step of what we're doing? Um, we don't want to lose the audience. You're less likely to lose a bunch of improvisers if you're making bigger swings, which could go for form or for being more emotionally vulnerable
Right.
or lots of stuff. So that's definitely a great point. Um, yeah, I don't know, Bob. So in terms of playing more for yourself or for the audience, or is there other ground that you wanted to cover in the conversation?
I think I got everything. Pretty much everything I as much as I've been thinking about this for what 3 weeks now. That's probably all my thoughts of it because again, to me, it's always going to be a sliding scale. So I can't really cement one definitive answer to that. Um, and I think that's the answer. It's a sliding scale. But I always think it should be. I know it's kind of a cheesy answer, but it should be for both. At
Yeah,
the end of the day, you should have, and whether it's 70-30 in then either direction, it should be entertaining overall
yeah,
because that is part of your job. You're an artist. You're supposed to make art, so it should be, you know, it should be an expression, and it's free up to interpretation. But
yeah,
uh, people if people are paying money, they should get some. They should feel as if they got their money's worth, or even more.
yeah,
Because you want them to come back.
yeah. Absolutely. Yes, 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 yes. I would also argue well, it's a whole different conversation. Really, is like they paid for the show, but are you getting paid for the show? Uh,
Right.
is also different scenarios. Um,
Well, I guess the other question is, have you ever played too much to the audience and it's gotten away from you?
Yeah, I can't think of a specific like show, but I will say that one like thing that I've learned that I thought of earlier in the conversation is that in those moments where you're doing a scene and then like I'll just use the example of like sitting in a car. Sometimes there's like somebody sat on the left side or the opposite side of where the steering wheel should be, and
Hmm.
sometimes make the whole joke about like
Being
oh
in
yeah,
Europe?
one of those European cars or we're in Europe. um so just using that example, here's an instance where okay, your scene partner is sitting on the quote unquote wrong side of the car with a miming a driving wheel. They don't know. You make the assumption that they don't know that they're on the wrong side, but
Hmm.
you do, and you're like, I'll bet you the audience notices too, or because usually that will get a laugh. You're like, oh, one of those European cars, right? That you
Right.
laugh because people are like, that's right, it's on the wrong side. But so it's a scenario like that where I'm like, oh, I could take something that I notice and assume that if I notice, enough people in the audience notice that I can exploit it and have fun with it. But if I feel like my scene partner doesn't notice or will feel caught off guard, I will not acknowledge it in the beginning of a scene because I have definitely um, uh, made missteps where I felt a scene, my connection with my partner in a scene,
Yeah.
uh, wrecked because
Yeah.
I made an earlier connection with the audience than I did with my partner.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my rule is like
No, that's a really good one. I like that.
early on it's me and the scene partner, and then we can play with the audience together.
Uh, Most of the time, it's me making a mistake, so I'll call it out first. For example, I think the suggestion was bathroom, and I went to go sit on the toilet. But when I sit down, like in those chairs that we have at the theater, I cross my leg. So when I sit down, I cross my leg, and like no one uses the potty that way.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
and I just made it a choice. You know, I'm taking a gentleman's poop. Thank you.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
again, there is no like one answer because
Right.
if you and I are playing, like we're comfortable, we're already connected
Oh,
before
I'm throwing you under the
the show
bus.
starts, before the
You're in a
scene starts.
European car. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can we can do more,
Yeah.
but like yeah, I think it's a good goal. At the end of all of this, I think it's just a good goal to try to have shows that are as enjoyable for the audience
Mhm.
that they are for the players. Like to tend to both things is the best case scenario, right?
Absolutely. Actually, to be honest, I probably wouldn't say anything if you were on the wrong side of the car to see how long it took you to notice. So
You'd be like, sure, I'll get in the car over on this side.
no, I wouldn't even say no. That's giving you too much a hint.
Yeah.
I'll probably wait for you to like if you start to I don't know, if you start to build some tension somehow. I'll say that. Well, you're the one that's driving on the wrong side of the car. You
Oh,
know, just, yeah,
you'd use it. You'd
yeah.
use
I just put it in my little improv pocket, just waiting to use it.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're the one that bought this dang European car, sir.
Right. Steven says, thanks for reminding me that this is
Oh,
art. Yeah, and I think that we definitely
yeah.
could all use a reminder of that now and again.
Well, and thank you, Stephen, for all the comments and the questions, man. I really appreciate it. It's made this interesting, or more interesting. It's always interesting, but
yeah, thanks so much for tuning in.
yeah, man.
And Bob, before we sign off, is there anything that we need to mention or that you got coming up that you want to plug?
No, I'm
So-
working on my basement bar, so that's I don't know. It's not gonna be on streaming or anything, but I'm excited for it. How about you, James? You working on anything?
No, nothing to announce at the moment.
And I'm a number one bowler, so
Yeah. Well, we always have number one bowler. So thanks again for joining. Check out the improvnetwork.org. Go to the Improv Network's YouTube channel to also check out Improv FAQ stuff, or you can go directly to Improv FAQ on YouTube as well. And we hope to catch you next week and every week on the Improv Network podcast. Bye.
bye.